You're listening to She's the Business podcast. Have you ever noticed that the people you love to follow generally have content that's so engaging, lighthearted, relatable? It's got a certain energy to it. And you're thinking, well, how do I have some of that? How could I be that type of person so that people find me, they love me, they want to follow my content, but more importantly, they're not just any person, they are the right sort of audience for you who's actually the buyers of your stuff. Well, today's episode, we're diving into why humor can be the thing that sets you apart, keeps you ahead of the game, and actually turns your content into mildly obsessive content people love to engage with and follow. And more importantly, that helps you sell your stuff like hotcakes. So I can't wait to share this episode with you. Stay tuned. It's coming right up. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration. Today, I'm so excited to bring back on the podcast my very special guest, Lisa Twohig. Now, Lisa, this is the second time she has featured on She's the Business podcast, but she's had a complete pivot and change in her business since her first episode. And now she's a visibility and content coach. Lisa is also a member of my Business Jam program. She's been with me over the last couple of years, and it's been amazing to see what she's become known for, which is her amazing quirky sense of humor. That is now her secret weapon. She has been attracting so many clients who are looking for help with their content, looking for help to stand out and stand apart from the enormous amount of same, boring, or even slightly looking to stand apart from all the sameness that is going on out there in the online space. Lisa is obsessed with giving her clients, who are women in their 40s and 50s, that permission to throw aside their corporate voice, the professional way that they have been taught and how to behave, and to show a lot of themselves in their content. She herself is often seen sharing mildly inappropriate posts on Facebook and stories in her emails. And this has created for her a huge amount of momentum in her business as people seek to learn how to adapt and adopt humor into their own content because it has such a powerful impact. Now, I'm sure you cannot wait to hear from Lisa and hear from how you can think about using humor and what that looks like actually when we break it down in this episode. So without further ado, let me play the episode for you. Right. Hello. Welcome, Lisa Twohig, to the She's the Business podcast. I'm actually welcoming Lisa back to the podcast because we recorded an episode way back when I first began it, and she has come a long way in her business since then. Lisa is a visibility and content coach, and this is something that she's really stepped into and is here to share with us a lot about what she's doing differently that's really helping her to stand out and stand apart online, which I think is a struggle so many of us have. So welcome, Lisa, or welcome back, I should say.
Surprise, it's me again. Yeah, thanks for having me again, Jess. I really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. I love having, people like you, my clients, and my people who've been in my programs on the podcast because it's such a good way to share everything that you are doing and what you have grown to and learned over time. But can you tell us what it is that you do in your business now? Who do you help? How do you help them? What is that all about? And then I'd love to dive a little bit back into how you got here.
Yeah, sure. So right now I am a visibility and content coach, and I really specialize in helping women of my similar age, should we say, around about the 45, 50 to 55 mark, that perimenopause, menopause range. I really help those women to stand out from the crowd online, and just use their unique voice to put that into their content and have that confidence to step into themselves, because I think that there's a lot of mindset stuff that comes with going through menopause, and we tend to lose ourselves a little bit, shall we
Mm-hmm.
say?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm here to do, really. I'm having enormous fun. It's just been such a blast. And yeah, I couldn't think of anything else I'd rather do now.
That's so cool. I remember when I first met you and you were like, I just really want to have fun and teach other people how to have fun. That was one of the first things that's really stuck in my mind from our very first conversation. And to see you doing that now, it's amazing, because look at the fun you're having, and also that's meaning for other people, where we're actually feeling like, hey, it's okay to have fun. Business doesn't have to be so serious all the time. It can be fun and exciting. And, I think I'd love you to talk a bit about this, because I know that you also come from a corporate background. And when we have had so much of our life, especially those early years out of school, out of university, into some organization, and we get told how to act, how to talk, how to do all of the things. I remember sitting down with managers when I was young, and he'd say, let's tone down this email a bit, because I was emailing someone, probably being quite direct about it. And this was actually in the UK, so you would relate, Lisa, because that's obviously where you're from as well. And he's like, yeah, I think we need to be a little bit less direct. And so I got toned down over, time and time again. And this really then, how are we coming out of that and into our own business? And what are some of the challenges that you see with people? So maybe you could talk from your own personal experience as well, but then what you are helping people to do who are also in this place.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, because I spent over 20 years in corporate. I was a project manager on like multi-million pound construction schemes. So I did a lot of work with having to write newsletters to go out to the public. We had to
Mm-hmm.
go with onto media, and there was a lot of writing, and it was very persuasive writing. And not only that, it was we had to sort of create business cases to go up to senior leaders and to boards who would sign off these multi-million pound and dollar schemes. So the language that I was using was it was so refined over years and years with their brand voice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came out of corporate, I was just at that point where I felt suffocated, because I'd watered down my speaking and my writing just so that I would fit in with all of that. And if any of you are rebels out there, you'll know you hate that. We don't like to be told what to do.
Oh my goodness. Well,
And
yeah,
so,
so
yeah.
similar about that. Oh, it's awful, isn't it? Because you do feel like you've lost you, and you're like, well, I've got so much more to share, but it's almost like you're told that they don't want it. They don't want it that way. They want it in this certain way, and it is kind of crazy to think about just how much hyperbole and all these fluffy words and things are in there just to make something sound impressive, so that some people who think that they're really important and impressive go, well, this is obviously good enough for me to sign off on because it's got all these important sounding words in it. And I'm like, oh, it's just so fake. Anyway, that's my experience. But back to you.
Yeah, that's so funny. And do you know what? Just about over a year ago now, I was in a corporate role, and I was earning like multi six figures. It was insane. The salaries there were just crazy. But there was still part of me that was thinking, do I really want to be doing this? I'd had a business before. I'd come back into corporate because I was lured in by the finances. It was very, very rewarding. But when I went back in again, I had this senior role, and still I wasn't allowed to use my voice. And I was a leader. I was supposed to be leading people. But yet when I spoke about things in the way that I did, because I was speaking to a bunch of engineers, I had to moderate what I said so much, because their personalities clashed a bit with my personality. So I found myself yet again having to moderate everything that I said and everything that I wrote. And I just got to the point where I thought, this isn't for me anymore. I need to step out and be myself. I've got another 15, 20 years working, and I don't want to be doing it here. So, yeah, I think that's huge for me.
Absolutely. And what did you see, like, because I guess that's part of, or, you referred to it just earlier, how you had to break down a lot of this learned way of being, and to actually be able to step into being the real you. And I've been watching you do this over time, and what a journey you've been on. I'd love for you to share for everybody else, what for you, some of the highlights and the phases that you went through in order to get to where you are today.
Yeah, so I started out in Business Jam with you, Des, and you were very straightforward with me, and you said you need to niche in, you need to have an offer that people actually want to buy rather than just something that you want to deliver, because you have to have clients to make it a worthwhile business. And so the more I kind of thought about that, the more I thought, okay, I really need to get to know my audience and who I'm speaking to. And I kind of lost my way a little bit because I realized that I actually wasn't in the right niche for me. I was actually in a place where I was trying to coach women who were in the corporate space how to get better pay, how to get a promotion. And it was all about giving them the confidence to do that. So there's a running theme here of the confidence coaching. But what I realized was that I was actually still trying to speak to people in corporate when I myself didn't want to be in corporate. And it was this huge revelation, and like the scales dropped from my eyes. And, and I was like, why am I working with people in corporate where I'm trying to get away from all of that? Yeah. So for me, that was just a huge pivotal point when I thought, okay, I absolutely need to change my niche. And so I switched over to a place where I was having fun. And that was all the spaces online, which had women in business, in their entrepreneurial journeys. And it was just such a lot. There were so many supportive communities out there. And I thought, these are the people that I want to be working with. I'm actually going to retrofit what I do to suit them and what they need from me. So that was critical to what I started to do. The second point that came up for me was then, okay, well, now I know who I'm going to serve and what I'm going to do with them. How do I speak to them in a way that they understand? And how do I wade through all the noise online? And what I realized I'd been doing was I'd been inadvertently, and very unlike me, I'd been looking at everybody else in the online space, all these shiny women who were doing really well, and these people who were suddenly bursting onto the scene with their really amazing content. And I was just thinking, oh, well, I need to write like that then. That's how you get success. And so, of course, I then was the equivalent of ChatGPT at that stage. I was then sucking everyone else's style into my writing. And so it just sounded really bland. And there was no kind of real authenticity behind it. And it just didn't feel like me. So I think a lot of people struggle with that. And that's where I had to create something different.
Yeah. This is such an important conversation because you've just sort of described like the phases that you go through and actually really discovering the real you and your real niche and your voice. And when you become like an impact maker, it's not because you've learnt the ways of doing it that everyone else is doing. It's actually because you've gone to that next level, which I'm sure is the next piece, right, that you're about to talk about, is actually finding what's within you and saying it in your way and in a way that works for you. Because the trouble with regurgitating or even mimicking with, say, styles and structures of what other people are doing is that you're completely in your head. You're not speaking from your heart. You're doing it from the head, and it has no energetic impact. Like, it really is, as you say, bland. Even though you might be using what feel like exciting words, it's got no energy coming from within you. And that is the real key. So it's so interesting because like you say, you started off with a niche that was niche, but it didn't feel right for you. And so all of this is part of like peeling back the layers, actually going, well, it is confidence, but it's not confidence there. Like, what is it and where is it? And what is my thing? And it does take time to, I think, find yourself at the core and where you are. And what would you say when now that you do confidence around visibility and content, what is one of your core themes that you think has really made a difference for you in how you present and put yourself out there?
Yeah, so the thing I noticed online was that there was a lot of seriousness going around. And the thing that I wasn't tapping into enough was the fact that I love humor. I love using it in my day-to-day life. Then there were so many clues leading up to this point where I realized that's what I should be using in my content. I've got a story about when I'm like a lot of other entrepreneurs. I have lots of activities I like to be doing. I don't like to stick with one thing. I get bored really easily and I just need to keep making things fresh. So rather than doing things like going to the gym to get fit, then to me, that's like the most boring thing on earth. And I just couldn't bear doing it. So I would always find like the different classes to go to. And the more fun they were, that's how I would stay on an exercise routine. And over time, I just like, after having children, and I had zero stomach muscles left. And my friend, it was actually my boss at work, one day said to me, "Oh, you don't fancy coming and joining me in a beginner's pole dancing class, do you?" And I was like, "That sounds like fun. Let's do that." And it was literally like that moment was the catalyst for so much that's happened in my life since then. It sounds like ridiculous, but if she hadn't have asked me to come along to that, then the journey that I took would not have happened. So what actually happened was that I stepped into this world of dance and gymnastics and so much more. And it just blew my mind that I could do exercise, not realize I was doing it, be in a community of people who were having so much fun. And I could bring my personality into what I was doing in this space as well. And as I got better and better at my pole dancing, it was more pole fitness, like hauling yourself up poles and like doing gymnasticy things up it. The more and more I got into that, I was like, right, I'm ready. I'm going to get confident and I want to perform on stage. And so I started doing a little bit of that here and there. But what I noticed was the style of the dancing was all pretty similar. And I just thought one day, I was like, why don't I just do something different here? Why don't I shake it up a bit and do a comedy routine? And from that point on, people would just come up to me afterwards and just go, "Oh my God, I saw your routine. That was the best thing in the show. It really stood out." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I might be onto a thing here." And that was the start when my comedy routines on stage just got more and more ridiculous. They got more and more silly, more fun, more engaging. And I had people coming up to me after every single performance just going, "When are you coming on stage next? I want to see you perform." It was just, I had so much fun doing it. And it just made me think, oh, actually, this comedy, something I really, it's in me. And this is what I need to bring out in my writing because it's already there. I do storytelling on stage in those performances. I know how to engage with my audience. I know what they want from that routine. And some of it, saying with my hands over my mouth, might be a little bit rude. But, I know my audience and that's what they were looking for. So I had to give it to them. So that was kind of where that theme of humor and comedy started coming into my writing.
Amazing. What would you say if someone's thinking like, I love things that are funny and a bit lighthearted, and it does, it is like a breath of fresh air when you've been reading all these business things. And I agree that can feel so serious at times. And actually, sometimes you can scroll on Facebook and literally just, these are the mistakes you're making. This is what you're doing wrong. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, whoa, okay, everyone, like, let's stop telling everybody how many mistakes that they're making all the time. And I know that that's what some guru is saying. You need to like focus on the mistakes, but it's like, yes, your content does not need to be so critical and to be so damning and like making everybody feel so bad that they're making mistakes. Like, yes, you might want to use it in content, but how about you use it in a really positive, fun way and, you know, make it seem really inviting and fun instead of so like you could like just come off that feed thinking, gosh, I don't even know what's going to happen next. And it's like doomsday, right? Because it's also negative. So I love that you're bringing humor to it. You know, my little voice in my head straight away is like, well, you know, I can be funny at times, but like if I'm actually trying to be funny, I think that's when I'm not funny at all. Like I can be very anti-funny, or I think I'm funny and no one else does. And I'm sure that a lot of people think that too. It's like, yeah, when I try to be funny, it's like, are people laughing at me trying to be funny instead of laughing with me? So what would you say to someone who, you know, is there a way to actually create genuine humor that you've figured out that you can share with us? Because I'm so interested in that.
Yeah, there is. And this is something that I do get quite a lot from people is like, oh, but it's okay for you. You're a natural writer, or you're naturally funny, you're naturally this. And I was like, well, actually, I'm really not a natural writer at all. In fact, I do believe it was probably this time a couple of years ago, Jess, that you said to me, Lisa, you're actually quite good at writing. And I was like, no, I'm not. So I think that's number one is, you know, don't underestimate how good you probably are at your writing, because what I learned was the more and more I practiced writing, the more my voice came out, and actually the more funny I became, just because I brought that sense of like, oh well, I'm just writing, so I might as well just write in a way that feels good to me. And if that feels good to me, it's probably a similar voice that I'm using when I talk to my best friends and when we're having a laugh, you know, when we're having a few drinks.
Yes.
I'm not speaking business to business here. It's like I'm talking with my friends. So I think that's probably the first thing to do, is just to kind of break down those walls that we seem to have through the screen.
Yes.
And just make it really, you know, okay, I'm out with my friends. How would I talk to them in this situation here? So that brings that conversational piece into it.
Yeah.
I think there's a few other things that we can do as well. So you spoke about the pain points. Now, it's so easy to start off posts with, oh, I can see that this is happening to you, and oh, isn't it dreadful, and isn't it awful? And we see it everywhere, and we think that's what you need to do to get people's attention. But actually, I agree, you need to speak about those pains because they're very real, and it does show that you're relating to people, you know where they are. But what I found is that you can actually do that in quite a lighthearted way that doesn't make people feel bad, at the same time as acknowledging that those things are happening to them. And the way that you can do that is to get super, super specific about what that looks like. And to give you an example, if I was to say, you know, for instance, I have a coaching practice and it makes you feel happier in your life, then what I would say is, okay, well, what does happy look like? And then I would, you know, get my clients to then drill down and say, oh, okay, well, happy to me means that, you know, I feel that I can just walk out the door and not worry about the drama that's unfolding in the house with the laundry. And because there's arguments going on with the teenagers and my husband. Like, oh, okay, so that's great. What does that really, really, really look like now? And I get them to drill right down to the nuts and bolts of what's actually happening, which when you translate it into that language is actually much funnier, because you can then see that it's something that happens to us all on a regular basis. And it's when you make it so basic like that, it does something magical. It makes it very relatable and almost quite funny. So for instance, you know, I would talk about, you walk out the door knowing that your teenagers have found the last laundry tab, you know, in the camping bucket, instead of it, you know, having to put in half a cup of bleach into the washing machine. And when you actually get down to those like nitty gritty levels, you can, what it does is it puts a picture in people's minds. So they're thinking, oh, okay, I can actually see my son going into the camping container to find the last washing tab, rather than putting a whole load of bleach in the washing machine and bleaching everything, like all my red stuff pink. You know, you can actually visualize that happening, and that takes it away, that pain, but it speaks to that reality of what's going on in your situation.
That's so true. it makes a visual image immediately in your head, and it's sort of almost reflecting. It's like there's a mirror, right, that you're looking at, because we all would come up with our own visual idea of what that looks like, and what it means. So it's like you're seeing your problem yourself rather than having someone tell you that there's a problem. And that's probably the beauty in that shift. Amazing.
Yeah, that's right. And what it does also is it shows people that most of the stories. So I'm a big storyteller online as well. In most of my emails, I tell sort of stories that relate back to the lessons that we need to learn in business. And what the stories do is they give that sense of humanity, that you are not just some shiny lady on the other side of the screen. You know, you have a life that goes on, and you have these real things that are happening to you that are very relatable to other people.
Yes.
And that just, it does break down those barriers, and it makes people trust you more, because they can visualize what's happening in your life. And what they do then is they transpose it into their lives too. So the minute they start imagining, oh yes, well, that happened to me, but in a slightly different way, that's when you've got their attention, is when they're starting to create their own story in their own head of what's happening in their life. So that's something which doesn't necessarily need to be humorous. It's entertaining, because they're now creating, it's almost like a film. They've got their own little film in their head, and that's keeping them engaged with what you're writing.
Oh, I love that. That's so powerful. And actually, it can just be so easy, can't it? Because you can think about, well, what's going on right now? How does this relate to what I want to talk about? And actually just joining those dots for people is so powerful. And, there was something that I heard recently as well, was, often when we're wanting to share a perspective or something new with people, it may be something that they really don't know about. And so you're often trying to connect two dots for them of two things that they don't know about, right? Because it's like, hey, there's this, and then that means that. And it's hard. It's hard for our brains to make that connection, even though someone's sharing it with us. And so that's where using a story or an analogy is so powerful, because straight away, if you can say, well, it's just like this, and share something that they would 100% know, because it's just an everyday thing that they're doing, or that they would have experienced or seen or could very easily imagine, it makes that point that you're making land suddenly, because they're like, oh, now I get it. I've never heard someone explain it that way before, but that's exactly it.
Yeah, and you're really good at doing that, Jess. It's using your analogies, and I definitely learned from you on that's it's a form of storytelling at the end of the day. That the only issue with that is, unfortunately, because of the amount of people who are online and using those sorts of analogies, we need to get really clever at using different analogies now. So the humor that comes into it is, I start using really random analogies that people wouldn't normally put two and two together. So I'll give you an example. There's, if you think about, people use the skyrocket your business quite a lot. And to me, it is an analogy, or it's a simile, because you can see what's going on there. But the fact that there's not many people who have much relatability with rockets, that's number one. That's number one struggle for me. It's like, skyrocket, it just reminds me a bit of Tesla, dude. And that's you. Yeah, no, don't like that.
Elon Musk, your business.
Elon Musk, that's it. Elon Musk, I don't want that. So and secondly, like, everybody's saying it, and the minute everybody starts saying it, you will get drowned out within that noise. So I often like to think about either analogies that are so completely off-piste, and they're not particularly imaginative ones. They can be literally something that when I'm walking to the shops, something will pop into my head, or I can be out and about and I'll see something and I'll be like, oh my goodness, that's just like the message that I'm trying to get across. And so trying to, keep your eyes open around you all the time, because there's different analogies you can be using all the time that are different from the ones that everyone else is using. So that's something that's really key, I find to using analogies. And just to make them, if you want to add on like an extra layer of humor into that, if you start off with an analogy at the beginning of your email or beginning of your content piece, to link back into it at the end, it kind of ties up that whole piece of content, which I find people really appreciate that, because that in itself is a form of storytelling, and we love stories.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us a bit more about that, because I think often someone can write a really good post and you're like, this is brilliant. But people don't necessarily see it because the initial line or first two lines aren't capturing the attention, because we probably started off writing the way that we all learned how to write, is like, right, well, I'm going to introduce something. So you're kind of introducing it. But by the time you've got to the meaty part, they haven't actually clicked read more. And so they've missed the whole meaty part of your post. What is your advice around that very initial, the hook? Because I think this is something that you've been doing really, really well in a lot of your posts, and why people have been, engaging with your content so much.
Yeah, so this one is something, and I will confess here, I do use a little bit of ChatGPT to help me. And it's pretty much the only time I do use it, because what it does is it takes an idea that I've already got and it expands it in a number of ways, so I don't have to do all that brain work. So that's my first tip, is if you you can use ChatGPT to help you with that. And bear in mind that most good copywriters spend 80% of their time on the hook. So
yes,
that's what cuts the time down for me.
So is it something like, here's a subject line, give me 30 other examples, or, so you're asking it to give you some other, do a brainstorm for you, essentially, so that you're not doing that yourself? Is that how you use it?
You can use it in that way. The other way that I sometimes use it is if I have an idea for a hook which is quite long, then I can get it to try and shorten it. Or my favorite way is if I have a hook that is kind of like, that's okay. It's almost like I can go in and ask it to give me synonyms for one word. And the minute I do that, it will generate like 20 synonyms for a word. And sometimes just changing one word can completely transform the hook. It's absolutely amazing. The only caveat with that is if you're anything like me and you like the kind of slightly saucy kind of language, then it doesn't really do that. So sometimes I put things out there that are a bit like, what I've actually found as well, it's really interesting that it comes back to knowing your audience. And I know, Jess, this is something that you're so strong on. I know my audience, women of a certain age who haven't lost their sense of humor yet. And they're not going to lose their sense of humor. It's under there, it's in there somewhere. And when they might subscribe to see comedy shows on TV, they might go and see films that have got humorous elements in them. They love those. There's always that underlying humor that they've got. So my women are also, they find things that are related to things that we all experience, the funny things that happen in our lives that aren't necessarily earth-shattering and groundbreaking. They're just everyday experiences, and taking those to the level where you would confide with your best buddy. So things you'd probably never even say to your husband. It's stuff, though, that you'd say with your best mate. Those are my women, because they're not afraid to just pop that into their messaging every now and again. I'm not going to mention any of the words that I use in here, but it can get a bit fruity sometimes.
And I think that's part of the fun, isn't it? Because you see it and you're like, oh, that's kind of funny, and then maybe a little bit naughty, or a little bit, it captures your attention as well. And I think it's all about, something I wanted to come back to as I was thinking when you were speaking earlier, is there's a real lack of letting go of judgment. So, when you're saying it's like when you're speaking to your bestie, well, think about what you say and how you talk when you're talking to your bestie. You just talk. You don't stop and go, well, hang on, should I say that or shouldn't I? Or maybe I need to water that down a little bit, or how will this be perceived? You don't have any of that going on in your head when you're speaking to someone that you're very, very comfortable with. And so it's really like dropping that judgment and, really asking yourself, well, where does that fear come from? When we're doing this from our business perspective, we're thinking that people are going to judge, or there's a negative outcome to you actually sharing or speaking in a way that is natural to you. And therefore, you're trying to speak in a way that you think that they want you to speak in. Goodness knows, follow that thought train. Like, why am I doing that? What is it? What am I afraid of? How will I think that they'll judge me? And what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Because when we drill down into it, it makes no real sense at all. Like, we're all people, and you think about, well, who do you follow? Why do you follow them? What is it about them that you like? And more often than not, I would imagine if you wrote down a list of names that you follow, and then for each one, what is it about them? It's going to be things like, oh, I just love their vibe, or they're really real, they're so relatable, they just say it how it is, like they're not sugarcoating it, there's no fluff going on. And I'm sure that there's going to be a theme there, right, of like reasons why we love certain people, and why they're so magnetic, why they're so attractive. And it's like, well, imagine if we can kind of then step into that and be that ourselves as well. You know, we're all going, well, we want more followers. Well, hey, the answer is right in front of you. It's actually what you love about the people that you follow. And let's just be more of that without the worry of what we're losing, because if someone's not liking it, they're not your person anyway, are they? I think that's
so true. And that's something that I had to learn incrementally. So my big theory is I'm not one of these people who will like pressure you into like, be more confident, come on, just go and do it. You know, I definitely don't subscribe to that, because I've learned my nervous system can't handle that. So when I started to develop my voice and find it, what I did was I unfriended most of my family on my business page. And anyone who I definitely didn't want seeing that stuff, I unfriended. But I didn't really start using my voice on my business Facebook page for a little while. What I did was I went in some of the Facebook communities that I felt really comfortable in, and I built my voice in those communities. And the more I did that and stepped into that, the more encouragement I got and the more confidence I got. And then it was only after a couple of months of doing that I was like, okay, I'm ready now to actually be this same level of sass on my business Facebook page. And so, you know, you don't need to go full bore all the way. It takes time. And even people who have been in my world for like the last sort of 4 months have said, oh my goodness, I can see you stepping in again much more into your voice. It's you know, growing and growing over time. So they can see that journey too. So it's not like a turn on the tap and here it is. Yeah, it does take time. And, you know, that's what I support my clients in is really being comfortable that it's a process that you go through, and practice. You're not going to be able to hone your voice if you're not writing and you're not speaking and you're not doing that practice. It doesn't come from thinking it.
Yes, exactly. And I think that that's something so true, you know, when we like we've talked about ChatGPT a little bit on this episode, but I think this is the ideal time to probably have another quick discussion about it, because something that I see and, you know, going on, and, you know, I really fear for a lot of people in doing this, is really heavily relying on ChatGPT to produce your content. And the reason why, and is exactly what you just mentioned, Lisa, is it's making your voice the sum of what everyone else has said. So what ChatGPT is doing, it is actually looking at stuff that already exists out there, and it's amalgamating it together and giving you an outcome of what has already been said. And so the more we do that, and then the more ChatGPT content that's going back into the metaverse or whatever we want to call it, like it's all coming back to us again with that higher volume of the same. And it's really going to water down and become very vanilla. And I am someone who's been very slow on the uptake of ChatGPT. I think the only time I've asked it to do something was to look at my own content and to give me an output that it only looked at my stuff, because I was like, I don't actually want other people's words. I want my own words. And yes, you can make my life easier by giving this to me so I don't have to write it. But I'm still not going to take what it's given me, even though it used my own words. I still am going to edit it so that it feels right, and it's what I want to say, and it's got everything with it. Because, as you said before, you know, it's the energy that comes with it. And when we're using words that other people use or things that have come from the external, and it's not within, then it doesn't have any energy attached to it. It doesn't have that ability to make that connection on the deeper level. And having said that, we can learn stuff from other people and it becomes our own, but it's like, I think it really needs to come from within. So it's kind of learning how to use ChatGPT in a way that's helpful for you, but that doesn't turn you into vanilla. Nothing against vanilla, it's lovely, but often we add things to vanilla to make it exciting, don't we? And like, no one's out there going, wow, I just really hope this ice cream shop has vanilla. We're like, we always know it's there. It's there every time. But you might be looking for something that's different that you've never had before. And your eye is drawn to that. And we kind of get a lot more excited about it, don't we? So yeah, what are your thoughts on ChatGPT and how you use it
so
that you can stay
many
true?
thoughts. So many thoughts, yes. I heard a great analogy this morning of somebody was saying that using ChatGPT, it's like using the same tea bag over and over again.
I love that. Yes. Oh my goodness.
Every time you use it, it just gets watered down a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. The way I like to think of it is that it's almost like the hyperactive 20-year-old graduate trainee you've got in your company who's like incredibly enthusiastic and just wants to get it all right, but you need to keep on telling them and directing them and pushing them and leading them, and you kind of just wonder in the end, why didn't I just do it all myself? It would have been so much quicker and I would have got what I wanted out of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, but there is an element of that. And one of the things that is really key for me is, if I'm going to be in this business for the next 10, 15 years, and I wholeheartedly hope I will be, I want to know that I don't have to rely on anyone or anything to create that connection with my audience. Because as a personal brand, there's the reason it's called personal. It's not ChatGPT brand, it's personal. And if people don't feel like they are engaging with me, then they're not going to be interested. And I'll tell you a secret, actually. What I realized was that there's a few really, really big names in sort of these business spaces have gone back to writing their own content, because not only was it that they were batch posting a lot of stuff, but they were outsourcing it to virtual assistants and who would, of course, use ChatGPT. They were outsourcing it to copywriters. And as good as those copywriters were, there was not the same energy. And I have noticed this actually within the last 6 months, maybe. There's been a bunch of people who are really, really big names in this space who are actually starting to go back to writing their own in the moment content. And it was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is where we need to be going, is keeping that connection, because the energy, as you're right, is just off. And we're not stupid as consumers. We can know that.
No, that's so interesting because, everybody, I'm not going to say everybody says, but I think it's something that you do hear people say, well, outsource things to someone else, anything that's taking up your time. If they're low paid tasks, get someone else to do it. And, I had times years ago where I experimented with somebody writing some content for me. I attempted to have someone help me with social media many different times. And it got to the point where I was rewriting everything anyway. And so I went, I'm actually not going to do that anymore. And I completely flipped the whole model. And I think it's something I shared with you a while ago, Lisa, but maybe share with everybody else as well, was like, well, it's my content and my voice. And so I'm kind of the only one who can create it. However, I can have someone help me to put it out there. So it's like, I'm the creator, my voice, my words. And yes, if someone else posts it for me, well, hey, that's something that they can do and that takes the time away. But I think I was already on that well before ChatGPT emerged, because I was like, it actually just doesn't sound right. When someone else is saying it or writing it, I could tell. Maybe I'm very granular on that. But for me, it was like, it didn't land. I didn't like it. And I couldn't have it where someone else could do that for me. And I think this is the thing with, like you said, with the personal brand is, well, it's me speaking. And so I could just have allowed it and let it be, but it actually doesn't come with the same weight. It doesn't come with the same tone, just because of tiny little choices of words or slight things in there that wouldn't have been the natural way that I would have said it. And you do create your best stuff, like something that I'm not sure if you kind of get into a mode of being humorous or not, if there's something that you do, I'd love to hear about it. But it's like almost sometimes where, you've been sitting there and trying really hard to write something. And I almost go, just stuff this. I blow the air out and I'm like, what do I really want to say? Well, it's just this. And I kind of like just get a little bit of a groove going on and then I'm like, bang, that's it. And it's been there the whole time. And I've just been masking it by trying too hard or thinking about it too hard. It's like it already exists in there. I just needed to kind of blast away all of this, I don't know, the overthinking, the whatever I was doing that was stopping it happening. I was definitely in right brain. I needed my left brain to switch on. But you're nodding, Lisa. Tell me what you do to get that, how do you kind of spark the humor so that you're already in that state when you come to create your content?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have found what works for me, and it's different for everybody, but it does take time to find out where your creative zone of genius is. And I know mine tends to be very early in the morning. So if I wake up and there's no one else up yet, I've got my little routine and I go and like make a little nest on the sofa with the cat and my tea. And I suddenly have all these creative thoughts that pop out. Sometimes that might translate into funny posts. Sometimes it might not. But what I tend to do is I just go with it and I keep writing and I just see what comes out. So that's one way of doing it. And that tends to be first thing in the morning. The other thing that I do is I do not write well. When I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to sit down and write a post. Let's go and sit at my desk and do it. That doesn't really work for me. I'm a bit of a fidgeter anyway. But what I like to do is go, right, okay, I'm going to go for a walk because I know that movement and fresh air and a change of scene just sparks that creativity in my brain. I don't know what it is about it, but it's amazing how it works. So I always need to take my phone with me because I'm constantly recording messages on my phone, just going, oh, here's another good idea.
Yes. Oh, I do the same thing. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's so good. But, in terms of writing funny content, my secret really is I will start off with one expression or phrase or analogy, and then I will go, okay, great. This is the great first line. What else is there in this topic that is funny about it? How can I, what are all the other things about this analogy that actually would really make it even funnier? And so, for instance, I had one post the other day. I'm giggling just thinking about it. I was like, oh, goodness me, this is a bit like The Bachelor, isn't it? We're kind of all standing up there, like, with our best frocks on, just going, pick me, pick me. And I was like, oh, okay. So what else happens on The Bachelor that I can relate to that message? And then I was like, suddenly, oh, goodness me, they have bath time romps, in the middle of a field. And what else do? They go on like overpriced helicopter trips. What else do they do? What else happens in that situation that I can then have in my post and relate it back to the theme of the message that I'm doing? And so once I've got that one topic, then that just blows up for me. It's almost like not expecting yourself to write the perfect post first go. It's having one theme or one topic or one thought, and then just seeing where that goes and trying to just get that all down there and then like joining it together with all the threads. And I think that the critical thing is that people say, oh, okay, you can write the funny stuff, but does that actually get you sales? And my key thing on that is the humor, it's the icing on the cake. It's almost like the sponge in the cake needs to be your core messaging, and that messaging has to be absolutely solid. Because if you then try and put icing on the top of it and you've got a saggy cake, or you've got a cake that just doesn't do its job, it really doesn't taste nice, there's no point in putting the icing on the top because it's just going to be awful. So it's that fundamental of knowing, who your audience is, what it is they want to hear from you, what the offer is, and how your offer and you are the best person and the best offer to do that job for them. And once you've got all that sorted, the humor on top of it is where the gold is.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that it's very easy to get lost in the surface level stuff and, thinking, oh, right, well, I just need to be humorous and then it'll make, people come and what do we think is going to happen? Like they're going to engage with your post or follow you. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're a buyer, right? Because if your content, it doesn't have that founding of the message underneath, the humor you're using to help make the point, to help engage and make it interesting. But there's actually an underlying message in every post that is 100% related to your offer and what it's all about, and helping you to attract the right people. And so that's where, you, like you say, you have to start with that, because otherwise the content is just fluff. And it's actually like you're attracting an audience of fans but not buyers, and that's never going to have a business that's sustainable. You're just going to be really busy creating content that people love, which might be fine if all you want to do is have a lot of followers on your Instagram account and feel awesome about it. I think that that's so important, is really coming back to thinking, well, this is actually just how you're packaging it together. It's a way of delivering your message, and the message underneath, you're really 100% clear on all the time is what you're going to do. And an example that came to mind the other day, I'm like, every time I seem to go on Instagram Reels and you scroll and you get the feed, it's like, how many people are doing a reel about what is trending reel audio? I'm just like, ugh, that is just like, there is nothing in that. It is not enticing. It's not creating desire or demand for your offer. You're doing it to try to get views and visibility. But how many people are doing it? Like, literally scroll through the reels. Every second one is like, hey, there's trending audio. I'm like, that is not a message. And not to be critical of someone, maybe they're creating audio and trying to sell them, but it's like, think about a different way to do this, because it's not how people might watch it thinking, what is the trending audio? But they're not watching you thinking you're a leader, I need to follow you. You're just a content regurgitator, basically putting out something that other people have already created. And, the platforms themselves do that job. So that's an example, just to give an example of content that has no value in it. You might get views, you might get people watching it. It has no value for your business, because it does not create a desire or help to connect their existing desire to your offer and help them take that next step. They're just going, oh, thanks for that. Off they go.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you a really funny story on that one. I had to laugh the other day. It was I had somebody pop into my inbox when I was doing a review for their Facebook page, and they said, I couldn't really understand how this one post on Facebook got like maybe 3 likes, and somebody DM'd me and that was it. And then I went over to Instagram and I used a bit of a different image, same text. I used a different image and I got 500 people like it. But I looked at the stats and 98% of them were men. Her target market is women. And then she was like, I don't know what happened. And she screen dumped and like shared with me the picture and the text. And before I'd even had a chance to respond, she was like, I know why. And the reason was because the picture that she'd put on Facebook was a silhouette of her with the sun shining in the background doing like some sporty thing. And the picture that she put on Instagram was of her very shredded, ripped in a bikini on the beach. It was a perfect example of, putting stuff out there just to get the followers and the likes. But actually they're not your target audience at all. And the message isn't landing with the right people. And I just thought, oh, I'm so glad she realized that herself. It would have been really awkward.
Yeah. That's so good though, isn't it? Because like, what a simple way to actually see your own stuff. Because sometimes we're too deep in it. And even just the act of her screenshotting them and putting them together and looking at it side by side, it's like abundantly clear straight away. Well, that's why, that's what's happened. And also, such a good point to dive into the data more. Like she did take that second step of like, oh, wow, I've got all of these people liking it. Who are they? Let's just look at the first level of data that I get from Instagram. And wow, that told a totally different story, didn't it? Because it's like, they're not actually her audience who are liking it. So, I think we always need to dive under those initial stats to see what is the reality underneath, because it can tell such a different story. And it really then helps to shape your future decisions when you're coming from the data that's real. So that's such a good one. Thank you for that story. Amazing. I think this has been such a great episode. I love how just broken it down and made it feel okay to use humor and to be yourself, and why it's actually really important, I think, to be yourself, right, Lisa? Like, this is something that you have 100% embraced and developed, and it works for you so well. And it's that you're not actually trying to be anyone else. You're being you and sharing, you funny things, but also that you just mentioned how important it is to have, it's not just about creating content that's funny or sharing something random that's gone on in your day. There's a point of why you're sharing that story, because it ties back to your core message. And that, I think, is really the critical piece. And it doesn't have to be hard. I don't know if anyone's listening thinking, wow, this just sounds really complicated. It's actually not. Maybe Lisa can talk through like that, when you're starting, you're testing things out, but how does it change once you have like absolute clarity on your core message, the purpose, what it is that you're selling? How does that change things for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing actually. So the steps that I take with my clients when I'm working one-to-one with them is I really start with them and their brand voice, and really enhance that, because I think what a lot of people do is they try to be everything to everyone, and they don't understand actually what their audience is looking for from them too. So I get them to look at their brand voice, and then I get them to match that up with their audience and say, well, are the two aligned? Because if they're not, then, it's like I'm a mum speaking to my teenager in a voice that I'd use to speak to a toddler. It just doesn't make sense at all. So, we need to make sure that they match up, and then we sort of go on to really stepping into the power that you've got, that you are the best person for the job, and that then the skills that you have then relate to the skills that your clients are actually looking for in you. So when I speak to my clients about, being the voice of themselves online, it's always in complete alignment with their clients and who it is that they're doing this work for. Because if you're not doing that, then, as you say, it's just going onto the internet and sharing stuff for the sake of it. And I think the biggest thing for me is that one of my key messages is that if you're feeling that you're struggling with making your content, I know there's like a million different people out there saying, batch your content, don't batch your content. Here's how to create 365 days of content in 10 seconds. And, there's just so much about the more content, the better. Whereas for me, if I'm going to be in a place for 10 years, 15 years, where I have to post content every single day, maybe two times a day, even if it's just 3 or 4 times a week, over that period of time, why would I not want to really use my own voice, because it makes it so much easier, really understand what it is my clients need to hear from me, because that makes it so much easier. But also, if I can make it fun to create that content, surely I'm going to want to create more of it. And it won't be this enormous chore that I have to do every single day. Because I can't think of anything worse. It's like going back to the gym analogy, going to the gym and pushing weights, for me, doing that every single day, I would just, I wouldn't be here. I'd be incredibly unfit. So I think for me, it's matching up that how you want to come across online, what your audience needs from you, and how to make that sustainable so that we can actually generate a profit and keep going for, the next 15 years. If we're going to retire anytime soon, are we? Because we love this so much.
Yeah, that's so true. I think, when it's like you create the game that you can win, because you make it fun, you make it easy, and it's easy to do. And that's not to say that, you have to do everything yourself, but like Lisa's saying, it comes from you originally, like it's your original content, and that's what makes it stand out. That's what makes it different, because it hasn't already been created by someone else. And when it comes from you in that format, then you can have other people help to put it out there and do the other things, which takes the time away from you. But you can be the generator, the creator of your own branded content, which, it is so important. And exactly, I think the other key message that I heard from you, and even just in sharing your story, what you do is you take that time to think about it. So when you're putting something out, there's the quality over the quantity. And I love that you shared that, because it's something I'm always telling people. I'm like, it does not matter whether you post 3 times a day, once a day, maybe 3 times a week. Like literally there will be somebody out there with a method for any type, maybe even 5 times a day. Someone's out there saying you have to post 5 times a day. Great. That's what may have worked for them. That's something that they're doing. That does not mean that that is the way. There is no one best, right, only single way of doing it. And what you're saying, what I've discovered as well, is like the quality over the quantity. Like, put something out that has a meaning, that has context, it's got something relevant, and there's a purpose for it. So that ties it back to, it's your main, what it is that you're out there to share with people. Why are they coming to you? That's why I think there's so much, misappropriated advice out there where it's like, create something funny that engages someone, like sharing a cat meme. It's like, well, if your business, if there's no relevance or connection from that meme with what you're doing, then it is absolutely pointless waste of time if you're doing it. Even though you're getting people that, might see your content, they're seeing a cat meme. That doesn't actually add any value to you and your business by doing that. So, that's a really great message that you put forward today and help people to think about. And I just love that it's like, let's just have fun with it. Now, what if you just went, okay, well, if I was going to have fun, what would be fun? What would I like to talk about? What do I really want to say? If I had no judgment or no one sitting there, what would I say if I was just speaking to, maybe we imagine nobody's there, or our best friend, or someone that we can share with without the judgment, because that might be a good place to start, right?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Yeah. Now, if anyone wants to follow you and come and see some of your funny, humorous content and engage with that, where would we best find you, Lisa?
Yeah, so my main Facebook page is Lisa T Coaching. That's my business page. I don't do my Facebook profile. And my website is www.lisatcoaching.com. So yeah, just pop over. If anyone wants to DM me, then I'm into my DMs, or if you want to chat to me about working with me, then that's we can just jump on a call as well. So I'm open. If you're an introvert like me and sometimes you don't want to have a call with somebody, it's easy to go into DMs, isn't it?
Yeah, that's lovely. Amazing. Well, I'll hook up those links in the show notes so you can dive down there and connect with Lisa. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Lisa, and sharing with us. It's been amazing. It's awesome to see you standing out, doing something different, and just the huge impact that it's having for you and your business as well.
Thanks, Jess. I've loved it.
Now, if you're a professional offering coaching or done-for-you services and you're not currently attracting enough clients, and the ones that you are attracting are not high quality, meaning they're not the sort that will light you up inside or paying premium rates, and they're just not feeling like a great match for you, then it's very likely you've simply got a disconnect happening in your marketing strategy, which the good news is really easily fixed when you know how. So I'd like to invite you to join me for my only free and live training that I'm running this year in 2023, and it's called Master Your Marketing. I'm going to share with you the strategic principles you can apply today in your business so that you can attract the high quality clients and be working less and earning more. So you have more free time to spend with your family or for yourself or doing whatever it is that you love to do most. So this training is split into 3 separate sessions, just so that it's not too much all in one go. I really like to get rid of the overwhelm. Let's make this super, super simple. It starts on the 12th of October and it's going to run over the course of about 10 days. So there'll be 3 live sessions. There will be plenty of chat and time to connect in between. Yes, there will be replays. And I'm even planning a secret podcast for those people who have registered so that you can consume that content in a way that really makes sense for you, especially if you are already a podcast listener and you like to listen when you're out on your walks or driving or doing other things, then I've got you covered. So head to jessicaosborne.com/MYM and pop your name down on the list to register for this training now. You're only going to get access to it if you are registered. And there's so much fun that we're going to have. This is the one time I'm, really throwing open the doors, having a bit of a party. You're all invited. Come and join me for it. We're going to have an absolute blast. So that is starting the 12th of October. And all you need to do is head to jessicaosborne.com/MYM. The link is below in the captions, in the show notes. So please get yourself on that list. Register now and we can connect before the training even starts and start having a lot of fun together. So that's jessicaosborne.com/MYM for Master Your Marketing. Let's master your marketing this year.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of She's a Business podcast. I hope that you've been enjoying it as much as I have in creating the content to bring to you. So I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your presence and your attention. Now, if you love the podcast or maybe you just loved today's episode, then I would absolutely appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcasts, scroll down, hit the 5 stars, and then leave me a short review about what it was that you really enjoyed in this episode, or maybe in the podcast overall. And when I receive those reviews, then I love to give those reviewers a shout out on my future podcast episodes. So you never know, you may hear your name getting a shout out in a future episode if you do that. So thank you once again for your time, and I'll see you next time on She's the Business.